We're going to return to this ridiculous position of the United Nations and this anti-terror conference. And again, Iran holding a conference where its anti-terrorism was focusing on the wicked policies of you and me, Great Britain, the United States, all Western powers. And they accuse the United States of just making up the Holocaust, 9/11, making it up as a way to suppress Muslims. We've heard that's usually conspiracy theory people. And the UN, though, has sent appreciation to this international conference on the global fight against terrorism. That's what they called it. It's a fantastic title. The Canadian organization UN Watch is spearheading a move to get the United Nations to take back their support. We are joined now by Hillel Neuer, the executive director of UN Watch. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good to be here.
How important is it that the UN takes this back?
Oh, I think it is important. Look, this is like Bernie Madoff announcing an initiative to combat fraud. But,
well said.
But, it's not only a sick joke. This is a strategy of Iran and other regimes to put out the nuttiest propaganda because in certain places in the world, people believe it. And Iran's entire state media has been running with the story. The headline of one of the news agencies, the Fars news agency, said, and I quote, UN chief praises Tehran's anti-terror initiative. Now, imagine if you're a victim from the past 2 years of the innocent, peaceful protesters in Tehran who were challenging those fraudulent elections and who've been brutalized by the police, they've been raped, they've been thrown into jail, all kinds of terrible things, many have been killed, and you get these headlines on Iranian TV and newspapers and news agencies and websites that the UN has praised this conference. It's just a demoralizing kind of thing, and Iran knows it. So it's a strategy vis-a-vis countries around the world, and it's a strategy internally also. And so UN Watch is calling on the United Nations to say, you made a mistake. And there's diplomacy, we get that, but someone screwed up here, and they have to retract it, and they should condemn the pernicious things that were said at that conference against Americans, British, the entire Western civilization, really.
Absolutely. Let's talk about some of the things. They have said this before at conferences. It's nothing new. But is this the first time they've actually had a title that it's about, what did they call it? The global fight against terrorism. Is this time they have shamelessly wrapped it in the fight against terrorism?
Yeah, well, there was something similar a month ago, actually, but I don't think that they had world leaders here. This time, it's really sad. It's sad for the Western world, sad for Americans and for Canadians, and for Brits and others, that among those attending were the heads of state of Afghanistan, Hamid Karzai, the head of Pakistan, the president of Pakistan was there, and also of some other neighboring countries, Iraq was also there. Now, those are all countries that have received billions upon billions of Western dollars, both in military forces who are there to put them back on track, as well as billions in aid. And Canadians are serving there. The cause is just. It's to stop terrorism in our shores, but also to allow young girls to be able to have an education without having acid thrown on their faces by Taliban extremists. So, we're going out to those countries, and a number of them went to sit with Ahmadinejad at this conference. So Iran has done similar things. A number of years ago, in 2007, they had a Holocaust denial conference.
Yeah, I remember that, but it wasn't so much to tie it into terrorism.
That's right. Yeah, there was apparently one a month ago, but it wasn't at this level. And really, where we come in here, UN Watch, is we want the United Nations to work. We believe that the United Nations cause and its founding origins are noble. People like Eleanor Roosevelt, Canada's John Humphrey, who taught me when I was at McGill Law School about human rights. These people helped craft the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. All of those things are noble and good. But when countries like Iran and Syria and Libya get to have an influence over the Secretary General and get him to send these messages of praise, and the UN defends them and says, every country is equal. No, they're not equal. The UN was founded on
But that's what the UN believes, though, and that's always the problem with the United Nations.
Well, it need not be. Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General, was just reelected last week. And I got to tell you, I feel let down because our organization, UN Watch, welcomed his reelection. And we did.
Are you surprised he did this then?
We were surprised, and I'll tell you, I have an op-ed in tomorrow's New York Daily News, and I'll just sort of give you the scoop, which is that I outline a number of things that he did. Actually, the day that he took office, January 1, 2007, one of the first things he did was he condemned this Holocaust denial conference that happened at that time. And in the past few years, he has spoken out, not every time, but a number of times when Iran and other nutcases have said terrible things. Ban Ki-moon has condemned them. There's an expert of the Human Rights Council, of the UN Human Rights Council, which is a body that includes Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Russia, China, Cuba. Last year they elected Gaddafi. So this body has an expert called Richard Falk. He's an American. He's one of the leading truthers. There's a book by the National Post comment editor Jonathan Kay about the truther movement, the 9/11 conspiracy.
Yes, I interviewed him. Yeah.
Is a leading truther, and he is the UN Human Rights Council's expert on Palestine. And a few months ago, once again, he gave voice to the theory that the 9/11 attacks were an inside job by the U.S. government. We spoke out, we exposed it, and Ban Ki-moon, to his credit, a few days later, condemned him.
Well, what's going on with this then? Mr.
So I don't know what happened this time. If someone wants to be cynical, they'll say, "Look, he just got reelected last week. Maybe he had promises to certain constituencies."
But it's a bit frightening, isn't it? And you're pressuring. You want the United States and Britain and for them to put pressure on as well. What can be done from UN Watch?
We saw America and Britain in particular singled out. Those are powerful countries at the United Nations. They were singled out and accused as terrorists. And why would the American and British populations allow their countries to be targeted this way and have the UN praising this conference as, quote, timely and important? So I called on Susan Rice, which is President Obama's envoy to the United Nations, as well as the British ambassador, to speak out. I said, I trust that you will do this. And I'm hoping that they will. This radio show, a lot of articles have been written. Tomorrow we'll have an op-ed in the New York Daily News. The UN waits sometimes until there's pressure, and I hope that decency will prevail here because, again, I believe Ban Ki-moon has moral bearings, and it's a very politicized place. It's often morally topsy-turvy. Certainly here in Geneva at the Human Rights Council, it's an upside-down world. In September, there's going to be this Durban 3 conference, which is commemorating a hate fest that happened in Durban, South Africa, where a UN conference on racism actually became a hate fest that was anti-Semitic and so forth. And Prime Minister Stephen Harper of Canada deserves great credit. He was the first world leader who said, this is a sick joke and we're not going to attend. The Minister Jason Kenney announced that, and Canada deserves great credit. A number of times the Canadian government has stood up and said that we believe in the true principles of human rights, the true principles of equality and anti-discrimination, and we're not going to let Ahmadinejad and Gaddafi and the Chinese Communist Party hijack the true principles, and we're not going to give these things legitimacy by just going along to get along, and that's the right policy.
We're almost out of time. Has Canada done anything official again on this issue?
We haven't approached them. I think Canada's done a heck of a lot on.
But you think the U.S. and Great Britain could pick this one up?
Yeah, Canada leads the resolution each year to condemn Iran at the General Assembly, so they get credit for that. And as I said, in September, Canada is the first one to walk out on the farce that's called Durban 3.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right. The Executive Director of UN Watch, Hillel Neuer, joining us live. I'm Arlene Bynon. This is Talk Radio.